the first thing you're going to want to do is prepare the image for your background, and you're going to want to find the largest image you can to use, and I suggest finding one that is 1280 wide by 1080 high, but if you don't find it that large, we can adjust it as we're going to do here in Paint. But the best optimal picture to have is one that is 1920 by 1080, because now most 24-inch monitors handle images that size. So what we're going to do is go out and find the image we're going to use, and we're going to go to paint.net and use this to create our picture. And I'm going to go out and find the image that I'm going to use, and I have one here that's the main entrance of our high school, and we're going to kind of do what we were doing before with our banner slider images, but we're going to modify it a bit as well. So you're going to want to take your image first and actually resize it like we did the other, and you're going to want to maintain the aspect ratio though, and you're going to want to take it to that 1920, and you see how it changes the height along with it, and then just click OK. And it won't look a whole lot different, but then you're going to go ahead and create that new layer by choosing Control and N. And this is the one where you don't want to maintain the aspect ratio, and you want it to be 1920, and then you want the height to be 1080. And now you're going to take and go back to your other image, and you're going to Control A to select it all, Control C to copy it. Then you're going to go back over to your other image and Control V to paste it in there. And the same thing, you want to keep this canvas size, and it's again not going to hold on to all of it, but it is going to take care of most of it without distorting it, and that looks fine to me. I might move it up just a tad, I guess, making sure I keep my image square with my sides. And now what I want to do with this one is actually do some image adjustments. And I'm going to go up to my Adjustments tab, and I'm going to add a sepia tone to it. Now, you could do a lot of different things with this if you wanted. This is where you could go and look at the effects and actually, sharpen it, soften it, whatever you'd like to do with it prior to. But I'm just going to go ahead and add the sepia tone to it because it kind of matches the color theme we're working with there. And then it just adds that to it very quickly, and I'm going to save it, but I want to make sure I'm saving it into my images file for my website. So I'm going to go out and find it there and save it into that images file. And I'm going to call this, oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. And I'm going to call this high school background. And make sure you spell it right there and save it in there. So this is just the first part. Next, we're going to move into Blue Griffon and show you what we need to do there. Okay, I'm showing you what my web page would look like with my background attached. And I want to explain just a little bit to you about what you're seeing here, because we need to actually go back into our page in Blue Griffon and add just a couple little lines of code in order for us to be able to constrain our page. So the white parts here that you see, this is called, that's actually a container, and this is actually our what we call a wrapper container. What it does is it wraps up all of our content, within a certain constraint, which in this case happens to be 900 pixels across. Now, where you can see the background image, that's actually considered the outer wrapper, and it actually is all the way out to 960. So we don't have that, we're not on our page, we're not telling our content to be constrained within those limits. But when we go to add the cascading style sheet that's going to let us put in our background image, we're going to give it those directions. But the first thing we need to do is go back to Blue Griffon, and my homepage was what I was just showing you, and you see that it's already applied. I'm going to go to a page where it isn't already applied, which is on my experience page, and I'm going to open up my source code here, and I'm going to paste just a couple of lines of code right after this tag here that says body, and I'm going to just hit the enter key there, and the code that you're going to need to paste I put into a Word document, and it's also in the folder for week 4, and I've already copied it, so I'm just going to Control V and paste it in, and you see I've created 2 dividers. That div means divider, and I've created now a divider ID for the outer wrapper and a div ID for the inner wrapper. And that's all we're going to need to do there. Okay. Now, when you go back out to look at our page, it doesn't really, it kind of shifts a little bit, but it's not going to look terribly different until we go back out and look at it in Firefox. See, it really doesn't look any different, because the next step we're going to do when we add the cascading style sheet is when we're going to be telling it what to do with those 2 dividers. So we're going to do that next. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is open up that experience page again, and this is the one where we're going to apply that background cascading style sheet. But what we need to do in that style sheet first is go ahead and open it, and hopefully you've saved that file into your web folder under a and I'll actually go and show you what I'm talking about. This is all of my information for my test site here. And what you'll need to do is create a folder entitled CSS and save that background style sheet into it. Now, I have a couple of others in here that I've been kind of messing with, so that's why you see those. So, again, it needs to be in your website folder in a file labeled CSS so that we can go and retrieve that, because we're going to actually open that, and reason being, choosing a different thing, reason being we need to adapt it a little bit, otherwise you're going to get my picture as a background, which isn't what I think you actually want. Now, here when I go to open this, I'm going to open up that CSS, and it looks like there's nothing there because I have to go down here and choose all files. And then that's when I'm going to choose that background CSS document and click OK. And it actually looks like this in the WYSIWYG form, but we're going to go out to the source. And honestly, this style sheet, you have to start with some metadata content that kind of resets the CSS and all that, which is kind of just code goop. And because what we're really going to be looking at as we scroll down is are these two and they're basically just little notes to ourselves as to this is where any global changes, we would put code for it, and this is where we would put any code for our containers. Now, the reason I asked you to make those outer wrappers and inner wrappers is because here's the code that's going to tell it what to do. And that outer wrapper is going to go all the way out to 960. That inner wrapper is going to go only to 900. The margin is going to be the same all the way around, and that background color on both of those currently is white until we change this background image. And that's where this global change is actually going to happen up here. And if you see in this code, it says background image URL. This is the URL for the image that I'm using. So you're going to want to change this, and this is where you have to get kind of tricky with this. So I'm going to actually just put my cursor at the end of that PNG and backspace all the way to all the way to the slash, and this is where I'm going to now insert the actual URL for the image that, or you're going to insert the image that you want. Now, where do we find that? That's where this gets a little tricky, so you kind of have to follow me on this. So, because you can't go up here and do the insert tool and use it. You have to actually go out and pretend like you're going to search for a photo. So here my cursor is going, so as if I'm going to insert a photo there, an image, I'm going to go and find it. And I'm going to go back a couple levels here. And I'm actually just going to reinsert the same picture I just took out, but you'll get the idea. And I'm going to choose my high school background one there. Now, what I'm going to do is copy this image location. And then that's all I'm going to do with it for right now. I'm actually going to even cancel that out. And then I'm going to go back to my style sheet. And where that cursor is, I'm going to paste that in there. Now, you should have, if you click out of it, it should look just like this. You should have a bracket or a parentheses at the end, a parentheses in the middle. Make sure you have these two dots, the slash, and all of that. Okay? So I'm going to save my code there. Now I'm going to go out to my experience page. And now I'm going to attach that style sheet to it. So using this little plus sign at the bottom, I'm going to choose linked to document, and then I'm going to go out and search for that style sheet. Oops, and I need to go into my CSS folder there, and I'm searching for the background, and I'm going to open that. And I want to make sure that I click add new medium to this, because browsers, different browsers adjust to different media within websites. So you want to make sure that you're choosing the screen media constraint here so that it adjusts no matter what browser you're using, and click OK. Now, this is the big reveal to see if it actually applied itself. So here we're going to go out to the internet and see if we see our image as our background. Yay, and there we do. Now, you see one little problem. We've got to go back and adjust our lines, which is actually a very quick fix, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Now that we have our background image inserted, we need to clean up the bars that we inserted, since they extend over into our background image. And we actually need to do that by going into our source code. It will not allow me to just delete those bars. But as you see where my cursor is blinking on the page, when I go over to my source, my cursor is also blinking there, and that shows me exactly where my code is for those. And I'm just going to start deleting that. Don't panic, it's just the bar coming out, not like cutting out a brain or anything like that. So, and you can see when I go back over into my WYSIWYG, that bar is gone. So now I'm going to go back and do the same thing, place my cursor right next to where my other bar is, and go back into my source. And you see it actually gives you the width and the number of pixels and the color and everything of what that bar is. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that across again. And when you go back into the WYSIWYG, you'll see that it is gone. So now what we need to do is insert new bars if you want that effect to appear. And I'm actually going to just, oops, and it actually messed with my font when I did that. Oh no. I may have to go back and change my font a bit too as well. But we may have to make some adjustments. But here I'm going to go and insert a horizontal bar. And now we know that the constraints here are only 900. So I want to make my width 900 and just make sure that I center it and choose a color. I kind of like sticking with that maroon kind of color. Clicking OK. And it will now insert my bar, and I can now bring up my my page tabs again and go ahead and insert another bar to those same specifications. So 900 across. You don't have to worry about the height. Make sure you center it, choose the color, and then click OK. And your second bar will appear. Now, I guess you would need to go in and if you needed to change those back again to make them bold, to actually change the size of them if it messes it up, go back into your style properties here for your text and actually work with your font family again and your size to make them whatever size you need them to be, and give it an ID number. And I'm probably at about A4, A5. I'm not even sure how far I've gone with that. So, and let's see. Yeah, just changed them and made them larger. I could change them to whatever font style I want. So now we can go back out and look at how our page appears once we've adjusted all of that.